Our family road trip to a new life in Seattle felt wrong from the moment we packed the car. My parents' smiles were too bright. My grandfather's silence was too deep. I didn't know it then, but this wasn't a vacation. It was a disposal. Hey everyone, it's Nora, and thank you for joining me tonight. I want to tell you a story about a choice. It's a story about a road trip that was supposed to be a fresh start for my family. My parents called it a new beginning in Seattle. They packed our whole lives into boxes, talking excitedly about their new condo and the new social circles they would join. And they brought my grandfather, Henry, along for the ride. At a crowded bus station in Portland, Oregon, my mother, Laura, handed my grandfather a small bag. She told me they were just going to grab some coffee from across the street, but I saw what was in the bag: a one-way bus ticket to a city he didn't know and a tag with his name on it, like he was a piece of luggage. They were heading to their new life, and he wasn't invited. This wasn't neglect. This was a calculated plan to abandon an 80-year-old man with early-stage Alzheimer's, hundreds of miles from anyone who knew him. It's a moment that freezes you in time, the instant you realize the people you are supposed to trust most in the world are capable of the unthinkable. It's a very lonely feeling. If you've ever had a moment like that, a moment that completely shattered your reality, I just want you to let me know you're here with me now by commenting what city, or even just what country, you're watching from. Wow, I'm seeing so many cities popping up in the comments. Thank you all for being here with me. It really means a lot. To understand how my parents, David and Laura, could do something so unthinkable, you first have to understand their obsession with what I call their Seattle dream. My father had just gotten a major promotion at a big tech firm, and my mother was determined to reinvent herself as a prominent socialite in their new, upscale world. They bought a minimalist condo overlooking Puget Sound, all glass, steel, and stark white walls. It was a space designed for impressing people, not for living. And my grandfather, Henry, a retired master woodworker whose life was filled with the warmth of sawdust, old books, and hand-carved memories, simply didn't fit the aesthetic. He was a beautiful hand-carved antique in their sterile, modern showroom. And so, they began to erase him. The beautiful oak rocking chair he had made for my grandmother, the one he rocked me in as a child. They sold it online, labeling it vintage clutter. The small wooden birds he carved, each one holding a story. They were packed away into a box in the garage, deemed too untidy for their new life. It wasn't just neglect. It was a systematic dismantling of his identity. He wasn't a person to them anymore. He was a problem, a relic of a past that interfered with the perfect polished future they were so desperate to build. It's a strange conflict we see everywhere, isn't it? The value of something with history versus something that's just new and shiny. So let me know in the comments. Type story if you're someone who loves things with a past, a story behind them. Or type modern if you prefer a clean, new aesthetic. I'm genuinely curious to see the vibe of our community here. I was watching this slow, painful erasure happen every single day in that cold Seattle condo, feeling completely powerless. But I wasn't the only one who noticed something was wrong. Hundreds of miles south, in a small town in Oregon, my great-aunt Eleanor, Henry's younger sister, sensed the danger. Eleanor is the complete opposite of my mother. She's pragmatic, fiercely loyal, and has a built-in detector for dishonesty that you can feel even through the phone. About a month before the bus station incident, she called me. She didn't even bother saying hello. She just said, "Nora, I just got off the phone with your father. He was asking questions about Henry's will and his old military pension. He called it getting their affairs in order, but it sounded more like he was sizing up an asset." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. She continued, her voice low and urgent. Then he started talking about options for Henry's long-term care. Nora, listen to me. Options is a word people use when they are about to do what is easy for them, not what is right for the person they're supposed to be caring for. They are planning something. Don't let them make a decision that your grandfather can't fight for himself. That phone call changed everything. It took my vague, unsettling feelings and gave them a sharp, terrifying focus. I was no longer just a sad granddaughter watching her grandfather fade. I was a watchdog. I started paying attention to every whispered conversation, every piece of mail left on the counter. The seed of suspicion had been planted, and I was about to find out just how deep the roots went. After that call with Eleanor, I became a ghost in my own home. I moved quietly, listened at doorways, and looked for the truth I was terrified to find. My chance came one Tuesday night when my parents went out to a fundraiser for my father's company. I went straight to his home office, my heart pounding with a mix of guilt and determination, tucked away in the bottom drawer of his filing cabinet, under a stack of old tax returns. I found a leather portfolio. Inside was their entire plan, laid out in cold, hard paper. There were power of attorney documents, prepared by a lawyer, that would grant them total control over Henry's assets and medical care. There were highlighted passages about interstate transfers of guardianship. And then I saw it. The final damning piece of evidence, a faded, tri-fold brochure for a state-run facility in a remote corner of eastern Oregon. The picture on the front showed a bleak, concrete building that looked more like a prison than a place of care. The fine print talked about shared rooms and minimal staffing. This wasn't a plan for his comfort. This was a plan to make him disappear as cheaply and as far away as possible. The family road trip was a lie. It was a one-way transport mission. That feeling, when you find the one piece of evidence that confirms your worst fears. It's this horrible mix of, I knew it, and I wish I had been wrong. The truth is right there in black and white, and you can't unsee it. If you've ever had that gut-wrenching moment of discovery, that confirmation you were dreading, just type the word truth in the comments. You don't have to share the story, just the feeling of knowing. Reading all your comments with the word truth. It's a heavy feeling, isn't it? Knowing something terrible is real. I spent the next 2 weeks on autopilot, playing the part of the dutiful daughter on our great family road trip. The drive down I-5 from Seattle was the longest 5 hours of my life. My parents pointed out Mount Rainier and the Columbia River Gorge, their voices brittle with forced cheerfulness. I just sat in the back with Henry, clutching his hand. The image of that grim brochure burned into my mind. The confrontation happened exactly as I feared it would. We were at the Greyhound station in Portland. My mother, with a dazzlingly fake smile, said, "David and I are just going to grab a coffee from that little cafe across the street. You stay here with your grandfather, honey." This was it. This was the moment. As my father started to guide Henry out of his seat, I stepped directly in front of them, blocking their path. My voice was louder than I intended. "A coffee?" I asked, looking my father in the eye. "Is that what they call it now?" I held up the one-way bus ticket to a remote town in eastern Oregon that I had pulled from Henry's bag. I don't think they sell coffee on a 5-hour bus ride. People around us started to look. A woman with 2 small children. A group of college students. My mother's smile vanished. "Nora, don't make a scene," she hissed. But I wasn't backing down. "A scene?" I said, my voice shaking with fury. "You were going to put an 80-year-old man with dementia on a bus and abandon him. You call me making a scene?" The world seemed to stop. It was just the 4 of us, frozen in the middle of that busy terminal, the ugly truth finally exposed under the harsh fluorescent lights. My parents' faces went from shock to pure fury. Their main concern wasn't their father, it was the scene, the unforgivable sin of being embarrassed in public. My father, David, grabbed my arm and pulled me away from the growing circle of onlookers. "What do you think you're doing?" he whispered, his voice shaking with rage. "You are finished, Nora. We are your parents. We pay for your college, your apartment. You will get back in the car and you will forget this ever happened. Or I swear, you are cut off from everything." It was the ultimate threat they had, the one they always used to keep me in line. But this time, something was different. I was different. I calmly pulled my arm away and looked him in the eye. "No," I said, my voice steady for the first time. "I don't think I will." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. A few seconds before I had confronted them, I had started a voice recording. "You're right," I said. "You are his legal guardians. But what you just described to me, leaving a vulnerable adult at a bus station with a one-way ticket, is a felony in the state of Oregon, and I have your entire plan recorded right here." I held the phone up so they could see the timer running. "So we have 2 options. You can give me his wallet, his bag with his medication, and walk back to your car. Or we can stay here and play this recording for the Port Authority police officer standing right over there." The color drained from their faces. The threat, the anger, the entitlement. It all just evaporated, replaced by cold, hard fear. Without another word, my mother pushed Henry's small duffel bag into my hands, and they turned and walked away. I didn't watch them go. I just took my grandfather's hand. Walking out of that bus station into the crisp Portland air felt like taking my first breath after being held underwater. We didn't have much, just Henry's small bag and the clothes on our backs. But for the first time, I felt free. I found a quiet bench, sat down with Henry, and made the most important phone call of my life. I called my great-aunt Eleanor. Her voice was warm and steady, a lifeline in my sea of chaos. I didn't have to explain much. I just said, "Eleanor, it's Nora. I'm with Grandpa. We need you." There was no hesitation. She simply said, "I'm in the car. Stay put. I'll be there in 3 hours." 3 hours later, her old Subaru pulled up to the curb. She got out, took one look at Henry's confused face and my tear-stained one, and wrapped us both in a fierce hug. The drive south to her home in Ashland, Oregon, was quiet. Henry slept, his head on my shoulder, and I watched the landscape change from city concrete to rolling green hills. Eleanor's house wasn't a sterile condo. It was a home. A small, cozy farmhouse with a sprawling garden and a porch swing. It smelled like cedar and freshly baked bread. She led us inside, sat Henry down in a comfortable armchair, and handed me a warm mug of tea. "You're safe now," she said, her voice full of a kindness I hadn't realized I was starving for. "You're both home. Everyone deserves a safe harbor, a person or a place that feels like home. I want you to take a moment and think of your Eleanor, your safe person. You don't have to name them, but if you have someone like that in your life, just comment with the word home below. It's a little tribute to the people who anchor us. The first few weeks in Ashland felt like emerging into sunlight after a lifetime in a cave. There was peace in Eleanor's home, a quiet rhythm of gardening, cooking, and taking slow walks with Henry. But as the initial adrenaline faded, a cold, nagging fear began to creep in. My parents were not the type to accept defeat quietly. I knew their public humiliation at the bus station would fester into a desire for revenge. One evening, as we sat on the porch after Henry had gone to bed, Eleanor looked at me and said, "Nora, what you did was brave, but it was an emotional solution. Now we need a legal one." She was right. As things stood, my parents were still technically his next of kin. They could still try to use their money and influence to have him declared incompetent and moved to a facility of their choosing. The recording I had was a powerful piece of evidence, but it was useless sitting on my phone. Eleanor laid out the hard truth. To truly protect him, to give him the safety he deserved for the rest of his life, I had to do something that terrified me. I had to fight them in court. I had to petition to become his legal guardian. The thought was overwhelming. Me, a college student, taking on my wealthy, well-connected parents in a legal battle. But then I thought of the alternative, Henry being taken away, sent to that bleak facility, his final years spent in a place devoid of love or dignity. The choice was clear. The next day, we found a local lawyer in Ashland specializing in elder law. I played him the recording from the bus station. He listened intently, his expression grim. When it was over, he simply said, "You have a very strong case. Let's get to work." Filing the guardianship petition felt like launching a single lifeboat into a hurricane, and my parents, as I predicted, responded with the full force of the storm. The official legal response arrived via a courier a week later. It wasn't a defense, it was an all-out assault. They had hired a top-tier law firm in Seattle, the kind with intimidating names on the letterhead, to fight me. Their counterpetition was a work of fiction. It painted me as an emotionally unstable and easily influenced young woman who had, in their words, forcibly removed her grandfather against his best interests. They accused me of kidnapping him for my own selfish, sentimental reasons. They even had the audacity to suggest I was trying to manipulate him for financial gain. But it didn't stop with the legal filings. They began a systematic campaign to discredit me, calling relatives and old family friends, spinning a heartbreaking tale about their troubled daughter and their deep concern for their father's safety in my unpredictable care. For a few weeks, it almost broke me. I would lie awake at night, the words from their legal documents echoing in my head. Unstable, manipulative, unfit. It's a special kind of pain when someone takes your best intentions and twists them into a weapon to use against you. It can make you question everything. If you've ever been in a situation where you were made to feel like the bad guy for doing what you knew was right, I want you to simply comment the number 100 below. It's our code for staying 100% true to yourself, even when the world tries to convince you otherwise. Seeing all of those 100s flood the comments. Wow. Thank you. Holding on to that conviction was the only thing that got me through the day of the guardianship hearing. I walked into that small Oregon courtroom, feeling like I was about to face a firing squad. On one side, there was me, my Aunt Eleanor, and our small-town public lawyer. On the other, my parents and their team of polished, expensive Seattle attorneys. Their lawyer spoke first. He painted a masterful picture of me as a flighty, overly emotional college student who had impulsively kidnapped her grandfather. He argued that my parents, as successful, responsible professionals, were the only ones equipped to handle Henry's needs. He made my love sound like a liability. Then, it was our turn. My lawyer didn't make a grand speech. He simply placed a small digital recorder on the judge's bench and pressed play. The sound of my parents' own voices filled the silent courtroom, coldly discussing their plan to abandon their father at a bus station. The judge's expression hardened, but the final, most powerful testimony didn't come from a lawyer. To assess Henry's state of mind, the judge spoke to him gently in his chambers. He asked him one simple question. "Henry, who do you want to live with?" My grandfather looked around the room, his eyes cloudy with confusion, until they landed on me. A flicker of recognition, a moment of pure clarity broke through the fog. He reached for my hand and said in a voice that was frail but clear, "I want to stay with Nora. She remembers me." That was it. The judge awarded me full legal guardianship. It wasn't a victory. It was justice. After the court victory, the legal threats from my parents ceased. The silence from them was absolute. And in that silence, Henry and I, with Eleanor by our side, built a life. For the next year, I finished my nursing assistant certification while caring for him. Our days were quiet and simple. We'd sit on the porch in the Oregon sun, listen to his old jazz records, and I'd read to him from his favorite woodworking magazines. His memory continued to fade, but his sense of peace seemed to grow. He was safe. He was loved. He knew he was home. He passed away on a Tuesday morning in early spring, peacefully, in his favorite armchair while listening to the birds outside the window. It was the dignified, gentle end he deserved, the one my parents had tried to steal from him. A week later, another envelope arrived from the lawyer. It turned out that during his time in Oregon, Henry, with Eleanor's help, had revised his final will. The document was short. My parents were not mentioned. He left his modest life savings and his pension to Eleanor as thanks for her care. And then there was the last item, the valuable family house in Seattle, the very house my parents were living in, the one they were counting on to fund their lifestyle. He left it, in its entirety, to me. Tucked inside the will was a small, handwritten note, his script shaky but clear. It read, "Nora, a home is not the walls that surround you, but the place you feel safe. You gave me that. Now, I am giving you one. All my love, Henry." I held that note and cried, not for the house, but for the beautiful, perfect symmetry of his final words. He saw me. He truly, truly saw me. So what do you do with a house that holds so many ghosts of a life you no longer want, but was given to you as a final act of love? You don't live in it. You honor the intention behind it. I sold the house in Seattle. I didn't even go inside. I just signed the papers and let that chapter of my life close for good. With the money, I bought a small plot of land just outside Ashland, a place with old oak trees and a view of the mountains, and I started to build. Today, that land is home to the Henry House, a nonprofit day center for seniors with dementia. It's not a facility, it's a home. There's a garden where residents can safely tend to flowers, a woodworking shop filled with the scent of pine, and a library of old books. It's everything that bleak brochure was not. It's a place built on the principle my grandfather taught me, dignity. My story started with an act of abandonment, but it ends with a homecoming to myself. The lesson I learned wasn't about money or houses. It was that true family isn't about blood. It's about who stays. Home isn't a place you're born into. It's the safety you build for yourself and for others. And sometimes, the most powerful choice you can make is to walk away from a family that refuses to see you, to choose yourself. If you believe that we all have the power to build our own sense of home, to become the person our past never expected us to be, then hit that subscribe button and join this community. Let's keep reminding each other that our value is non-negotiable. Thank you for being here with me.